Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, more fallout from the fall of Kabul, Afghanistan, and the effort to evacuate U.S. citizens and vulnerable Afghans. And hear from a former Secretary of Defense on how you can help. We have updates on the Pentagon's vaccine mandate and the reason 18 midshipmen were kicked out of the Naval Academy. Also, the latest headlines from the defense industry. An American version of the Israeli Iron Dome system, the Army tests it out. With the latest news and updates from the Pentagon to the platoon, this is Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. The news has been coming in a mile a minute lately, so let's get right to it. First up, service members not yet vaccinated against COVID-19 will have to sit down for their shots soon or risk administrative or criminal action. On Monday, the Food and Drug Administration announced that the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine has received full licensure, and the Defense Department is now working up a policy to require it for troops. A timeline for vaccination completion will be provided in the coming days, according to Pentagon spokesman John Kirby. White House officials remain committed to ending the U.S. evacuation mission in Afghanistan by August 31st, despite increasing pressure from lawmakers and advocacy groups who worry that vulnerable individuals will still be trapped in the country at that point. The Associated Press said President Joe Biden has asked his national security team to draft contingency plans should an extension to leave the country be needed, but he has opted for now to keep his deadline to withdraw all U.S. troops. The looming deadline for U.S. forces to pull out of the airport in Kabul, Afghanistan, has received international scrutiny as thousands of individuals are seeking to flee the country. The U.S. Naval Academy has expelled 18 second-year midshipmen after an investigation determined they cheated on a remote physics exam in December 2020. According to the investigation, more than 105 students were found to have, quote, likely accessed unauthorized resources for the exam. 82 of those were found to have violated the school's honor code, but were retained with sanctions and a 5-month remediation program. Instructions were clear and explicitly stated that use of outside resources was prohibited, the Academy said. The biggest vulnerability identified was inadequate proctoring. Now, turning back to Afghanistan, one question many people have about the situation there is about the impact the rapid fall of the Army and government has on veterans of the war. Recently, former acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller sat down with Military Times to talk about the importance of checking in on veterans and a group he works with to do just that.
So this long 20 years of war, we've known people who have lost their lives, who have lost limbs, who have continued to suffer the seen and unseen wounds of war. You know many families that have lost loved ones, paid the ultimate price for this last 20 years. What's your message to those people?
I mean, that's really what has brought me out to speak with you and go public. That hasn't been what I've done since I left office. And my heart goes out to the Gold Star families. And I can't even fathom what they're going through, the re-injury and the re-traumatization of what they're going through. And the cliche question now is, was it worth it? Well, and I'll go to my grave believing this, there's just an inherent value of service to your country. And the tragedy that befalls, that's the nature of war. And the tragedy that is war, it wouldn't be war if there wasn't tragedy, right? So I can't even fathom and have any words of solace or anything like that. I just, have been so honored to serve with them and served with their loved ones. And, you know, there's biblical scripture, of course, about no greater love hath man than to give his life for a friend. I obviously didn't get that exactly right, but and then for me, there's just enormous value and courage and dignity in serving your country. And, you know, we were so fortunate, you know.
Have many Gold Star families reached out
Yeah.
to you?
Sure.
Can you share anything about
No.
what you told them?
No, it's just too searing. I'll break down in tears. I can't talk about it here.
Okay. Anything else, any final thoughts, anything you want to share with the American public about your role as Secretary of Defense?
No, no one really cares about that. What I'd really like to share, though, is, you know, the goal that I had while I was there was to draw down these awards responsibly. I would firmly believe that. Then to organize the department for the future, which weren't very successful with, but still I think threw some ideas on the table. But at the end of the day, what the most important thing was to, you know, give voice and provide support to members of our armed forces, veterans, and their families. And I just, as a veteran, I think it's really, really important now, more important than ever, that we come together as a country. And, you know, only 1% of population serves. That's fine. That's what we've decided as a nation is the way we want to do our national defense. About 7%, I think, are veterans. It's a very small population. And I just urge, you know, the American people to reach out to a veteran. I represent, it was this warrant officer that I grew up with named Mike Carmichael had felt a calling. He's retired now, and he felt a calling about 2 months ago to establish an organization that brings public awareness to the crisis of veteran suicide. And of course, Mike sent me a note, and I'm like, how can I help? You know, because I love the guy to death. And he established an organization called Check-A-Vet, and checkavet.org, and it provides public awareness. So for American citizens that are trying to learn about veterans issues, it's a great website. We're not going to make any money on it. That's not our point at all. Happy to take donations to help expand our base. But and the other thing is, it's for veterans. If they're feeling in need, it's a good place to go for some resources. But at the end of the day, you know, if you know a veteran, go give him a hug.
Do you think after the tumult of Afghanistan subsides, do you think the United States, the public, the American public, will still have that kind of same caring about veterans, or is that going to go away, do you think?
I mean, that's the thing I worry about the most. That's what I'm very focused on. Administration has put a lot of money into Veterans Administration, but let's be honest, they only service about 30 to 40% of veterans' needs. This is about America. We sent these folks off to war. We have a moral, ethical obligation to continue to provide support to them. Because although the guns have fallen silent, the war continues for a lot of people. And that's my biggest concern is like, oh, wars are done, we're going to move on. This is the most critical time where we have to pay attention to these issues and make sure that our veterans and their families are getting, and Gold Star families, that they're getting the services and the support they need. That's my fundamental principle. That's why I'm going public.
We had the cost of war report came out today and said that the cost of care for veterans of this war is jumping to $2.5 trillion over the next by 2050.
Okay, so when we go to war, that's the cost of going to war. That's why these decisions of war and peace are so important, and that's why I think it's really important as well that the American people pay a lot more attention to these things as we go forward, and that we have a strategy and we look at this clear-eyed about what our objectives are, and we stick with that.
When we come back, more analysis on the events in Afghanistan and the latest headlines from the defense industry.
The military and defense market is constantly evolving. Stay on top of the latest news with Sightline Media Group's live events. Continue to learn, understand new tools and technologies.
We're live. You're on in 3.
Defense, government, and industry leaders come together for successful and proven engaging events. You'll gain valuable insight, get the chance to ask questions, all from the comfort of your own home or office. Sign up for our events newsletters and receive alerts for upcoming live streams.
Welcome back. For more analysis on the collapse of Afghan resistance to the Taliban, we turn to an expert on the region from the Brookings Institute on how things fell apart so fast.
The failure has been in the making for years and years. And the responsibility lies foremost with the Afghan government. The United States, the international communities made plenty of mistakes. Pakistan has duplicitously supported the Taliban for 20 years and never reduced its support for the Taliban. But at the end of the day, the most important responsibility is that of the Afghan political class, Afghan governments, that over and over put narrow, parochial, self-interested, corrupt interests over the national interest, over the basic interest of their land, of their people, to a large extent believing that they will be able to persuade the international community to stay in Afghanistan with an open-ended commitment for another 5 years, 10 years. They persuaded themselves that Afghanistan was too important to fail, incorrectly believed that it was the geostrategic center of the so-called new great game. Those were wrong judgments on their part. They were repeatedly told these were wrong judgments, that the United States had over several presidents now sought to depart from Afghanistan, but they never believed it. And so they allowed the perpetuation of the most disastrous forms of corruption, of the most disastrous forms of misgovernance, even in the very core of the most fundamental institutions like the Afghan security forces. There is also the need for protection for a larger segment of people, not just those who directly work for the United States, but those who chose to work for Afghan human rights organizations, who were Afghan journalists who chose to work for the government, but were not corrupt, did not participate in the looting and malfeasance in the country. They too should be made it should be made available to them also to come to the United States. So the crucial aspects now are to allow the visa processing to start taking place rapidly, the screening as well, to get people on the flights, and to also engage with the Taliban so it doesn't start preventing the evacuations and departures. The Taliban has not been doing that in Kabul, but getting access to Kabul has been challenging. There is banditry and looting and attacks by robbers on people who are trying to get to the Kabul airport. And people who are far away from Kabul might be very afraid and concerned to travel on the road. Well, there are a tremendous amount of obstacles that Afghanistan faces going forward. Brain drain is one aspect that's already happening with all those people who are trying to get to the United States or Canada or Europe. The big economic decline will be a very significant dimension, affecting all the many people who will not be able to leave the country. There is also a high possibility that the Taliban will simply not know how to administer modern governance systems. And of course, it's an open verdict yet as to how more moderate or not the Taliban will be compared to the 1990s. As I mentioned, I believe that a kind of the maximum outcome that we could expect is an Iran-like regime.
Now, for the latest from the defense industry, we turn to Defense News Weekly's Daniel Woolfolk.
The U.S. Air Force awarded Kratos and General Atomics contracts worth a combined $20 million for further development of the autonomous Skyborg drone Wingman. That's according to a Monday announcement from the service. Kratos received $13.2 million to continue work on its XQ-58A, while General Atomics got $7 million for its MQ-20 Avenger. The funding will allow the companies to continue integrating their air vehicles with the Leidos-built autonomous core system, which acts as the Skyborg's brain. It also pays for continued flight testing and experimentation, which will inform the Air Force whether the Skyborg drone is ready to move to a program of record in fiscal year 2023. After integrating the UTAP-22 Mako drone with the autonomy core, Kratos conducted its first Skyborg test flight in April. A General Atomics Avenger equipped with the Autonomy Core took to the skies in the second Skyborg flight test in June. General Atomics, Kratos, and Boeing were tapped to build Skyborg air prototypes in December 2020. So far, Boeing's Skyborg prototype has not flown, and the Air Force plans to host its next operational exercise this fall. More drone development news out of the Middle East. Two Saudi companies have inked an agreement to co-produce and further develop the Skyguard drone for operational use. The UAV has only ever undergone testing. The deal was signed on August 19th between the Prince Sultan Defense Studies and Research Center, an advanced electronics company, which is a subsidiary of the Saudi Arabian Military Industries, better known as SAMI. The UAV, originally designed and manufactured by the Research Center, has successfully passed testing and experimentation to qualify its subsystems in different environmental conditions. Flight tests were also conducted to assess design requirements. The United States is a little closer to attaining hypersonic technology. Army and industry officials announced that the Common Hypersonic Glide Body is expected to take part in a second, more challenging flight test later this year. The Defense Department has been jointly developing the CHGB that will serve as the base of its offensive hypersonic missile. The test marks a major step forward in accomplishing that mission amid mounting criticism that the United States is behind China and Russia in hypersonic weapons development. The glide body will be made up of the weapon's warhead, guidance system, cabling, and thermal protective shield. Each service will use it as the base while developing individual weapon systems, such as launchers capable of firing weapons from the land or the sea. Hypersonic weapons are capable of flying faster than the speed of sound and can maneuver between varying altitudes and azimuths, making it harder to detect and kill. The Iron Dome system is well known for protecting Israel from rocket attacks, and it's something the United States has invested in. The U.S. Army and the Israeli Missile Defense Organization fired off the Iron Dome at White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. The technology is made by the Israeli defense company Rafael. The U.S. Army plans to create 2 batteries with the system. And that's it for Defense Energy Headlines. When we return, personal finance expert Jeanette Mack explains the difference between soft and hard credit pools.
On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives you the details on the different types of credit pulls.
It's a fact of life. If you want to buy a car, be a homeowner, or even a renter, you'll have to have credit. And lenders will be making what's called hard and soft credit inquiries to check your creditworthiness at various times in your life. So it's important to know the difference between the two. Lenders do a hard credit pull to see if you're financially able and trustworthy to take on a loan like a credit card or a mortgage. It helps them see if you're managing current accounts responsibly. This hard pull on your credit can also lower your credit score because you're essentially asking for a loan. A soft inquiry has no impact on your score and happens when you receive an offer like a pre-approval for a credit card or when you check on your own credit. Before you apply for a loan, ask if a hard or soft inquiry is required. Keep hard inquiries to a minimum because multiple hard credit pulls in a short time span can hurt your credit score even more. If you consistently make on-time payments and maintain low balances, a hard credit pull every once in a while won't hurt. And it's always smart to check your 3 credit reports once a year. Reviewing regularly helps spot any errors and get them fixed quickly. Bottom line, your credit score plays a big role in your financial life. So take time to build and maintain your creditworthiness for a strong financial future.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next time. To get more of our coverage, be sure to check out our headlines online at Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times.com and DefenseNews.com. And to be the most up-to-date in your unit, get a list of our top stories in your email each weekday with our Early Bird Brief. And make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Now, on a lighter note, did you know the CIA's predecessor, the Office of Strategic Services, once conjured a unit of women posing as friendly companions, but whose goal was to poison German morale in World War II? It was called the League of Lonely War Women, and HistoryNet's Claire Barrett is here to tell us about it.
I get kind of tired looking at these fishermen hanging around here like a lot of sour apples. But you're sort of different.
During World War II, Allied intelligence services tried all kinds of things to play in the minds of Axis troops. From radio broadcasts, leaflet drops, to straight up using British cadavers to fool the Germans, no creative approach was spared as the Allies performed psychological judo against their enemies. One of those propaganda efforts was a little-known outfit called the League of Lonely War Women, or, in German, Verein Einsamer Kriegenfrauen. This shadowy unit of women went around Western Europe preying on the emotions of homesick Germans, trying to turn them against the war effort by making them think their wives and girlfriends were cheating on them, and in turn, lowering troop morale. Created by American Barbara Lowers, a corporal in the Office of Strategic Services, the forerunner to the CIA, the League of Lonely War Women utilized so-called black propaganda intended to create the impression that it was generated by those it was supposed to discredit. Letters were airdropped to Germans in the field with the intention of casting doubt on their partner's faithfulness. The letters, according to historian Kelly Keith, were supposedly written by women back home, suggesting that they were seeking sex and relationships with others. The mission's purpose was to bring down German soldiers' morale by making them believe their wives and girlfriends were being unfaithful while they were off fighting the war. The Czechoslovakian-born Lowers was multilingual, which aided the Allies greatly in their war of disinformation. One letter drafted by Lowers read, "The dreams you had at the front and the longings of your lonely nights will be fulfilled. We want you, not your money. Therefore, you should always let us show you our membership card in advance." There are members everywhere because we women understand our duties to the homeland and to its defenders. With all those foreigners around us, the leaflet continued, we would like once more to press a real German youth to our bosom. No inhibitions now. Your wife, sister, or lover is one of us as well. Talk about insidious. Additionally, leaflets were strewn around occupied cities and towns with instructions for those with lonely hearts to show up to coffee shops, bars, and restaurants with a red heart-shaped cutout adorning their uniforms. From there, a member of the League of Lonely War Women would meet up with them and subtly stoke their homesickness and frustrations with the war. According to later accounts by the CIA, countless Germans took the OSS agents up on their offer. And while it's hard to quantify psychological warfare, the League of Lonely War Women are certainly an interesting postscript of the Second World War. So these women were recruited in local towns who spoke the language, who wouldn't really stick out. So the OSS would go in and recruit these local women to kind of pick up these German soldiers, and it was kind of their way of aiding the Allies. So they weren't outright told to sleep with the soldiers. Some would flirt. Obviously, sometimes that was where it was taken, but they weren't outright said, like, you had to sleep with these men. There was definitely just some flirting, some cajoling, and just to make them feel homesick, really. It's very Soviet Sparrow style, but.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.